Quick note before we start, I'm not going to be showing any photos of phobic stimuli throughout the video without clearly warning you first, in order to make sure that it is safe to watch for everybody. Pretty much everybody has some sort of specific fear, whether it's the dark, heights, the ocean, or public speaking. I took Psych 101 last quarter and wanted to dive deeper into the topic of phobias after the class was finished, so I did. Hi, welcome to my channel where I talk about things that interest me because that's all I do all the time. The first thing I want to get out of the way when talking about phobias is the definition. The Oxford definition is an extreme or irrational fear or aversion to something, so that's what I'm going with. I'm not going to cross into conversations about clinically diagnosable phobias because that means that I have to talk about where the line is drawn between a fear and something that actually negatively impacts your life, which I'm not going to try to do. Today I'm just going to talk about extreme fears. It doesn't have to be a clinical disorder or something. So when it comes to the origin of phobias, the general consensus is that they're learned, and they come from experiences, and at birth we're supposedly only afraid of two things: falling and loud sound. Of course, you can condition other fears with those things, like how in the little Albert experiment they showed a child a rat right before a loud sound a bunch of times until he was afraid of the rat itself. But how would you learn a phobia less directly than that? It's believed that negative experiences or panic attacks related to certain things can trigger a phobic response, which you then are conditioned to repeat, which makes sense. For a long time, I was extremely afraid of bees, to the point where I would come sprinting into the house tripping over things if I saw a bee in the backyard, which was probably caused by an experience I had when I was younger and got swarmed by a hornet's nest and stung 11 times on my legs. This would also explain fears of clowns, dogs, needles, blood, thunder, and a ton of other common phobias. But what about specific phobias like submechanophobia and catoptrophobia, fears of submerged machinery and mirrors? How could those phobias be learned when they're so inconsequential? Well, the obvious answer, and the one that seemed most popular in my research, is that these phobias can come from nature rather than nurture. There could be people who are afraid of things they've never encountered because they're genetically disposed to a fear of something. This makes sense when you think about fears like trypophobia, being afraid of patterns of dots, because there might have been historic stressors like beehives and anthills that encourage development of genetic aversions to these things. It seems like panic disorder, agoraphobia, and other phobias have a significant genetic basis, which would help to put into perspective the mirror thing, because phobias are on the anxiety spectrum of mental disorders, and therefore can be an acute symptom of an overarching panic problem. So phobias can be caused by experience and genetics, but which ones come about most often? Well, of course it would be social phobias up near the top, because like 4 to 5% of people have social phobia. Agoraphobia could be nested in there too, even though agoraphobia is often related to a fear of being helpless during a panic attack in public. And aside of fears of heights, enclosed spaces, the dark, etc., there are a few that are more common than I thought. Astrophobia, the fear of storms, affects around 2% of people, and pteromeranophobia, the fear of flying, affects up to a quarter of the population. Yet some of the most common phobias, like ophidiophobia, snakes, and trypanophobia, needles, don't seem like phobias at all. Is it really excessive or irrational to avoid snakes or spiders at all costs? What about heights? If you're scared of being really up high, that's your body functioning properly and telling you that you're somewhere you're not supposed to be. While there is a normal amount of fear to be held for snakes, of course, seeing as it's built into our genetics, there's a point where it actually affects your life even when there's no real threat present. There are people whose sympathetic nervous system will activate at the mere mention of snakes. They don't even have to see one. And if somebody mentioning a snake or showing you a cartoon of one makes you scared, you've got a problem. I personally have some of these unnecessary fears, but not quite to that extent. Like I mentioned earlier, submechanophobia is the fear of underwater machinery and the like, and here are 2 pictures that demonstrate that. And though I'm not going to be showing any photos of dot patterns, I have a pretty drastic reaction to some of the trypophobia stuff, to the point where I made it a rule in our Discord server that anything relating to r/trypophobia is an instant ban because, oh my lord, what is wrong with some people's skin? And I also have developed a pretty substantial fear of open water over the past few years, to the point that I don't swim anymore, which is fine with me because I never like going swimming anyways. But none of that is very serious. I'm still able to function just fine in my regular life, and nothing is impacting my day-to-day routine, so technically I don't have any phobias. Is there anything particular that I didn't mention here that you're irrationally afraid of? Tell me. I want to know. But yeah, those are my findings on phobias. I just thought they were interesting. Thanks for watching.